I'll give you my quick rundown of, I think, best case scenario for Iowa.
Okay.
I think Georgia has to win. Best if Georgia would probably. I mean, Georgia wins. Washington wins, and better Washington like winning significantly. Florida State has to lose probably significantly, and then then you want the most points you could put against Michigan. I mean, if you're going to beat Michigan, you want to beat them by a couple scores.
Well,
and Texas also has to lose.
Well, so here's what you have, right? You've got Georgia and Alabama playing. One of those teams is getting in at a minimum, right?
Yes.
I mean, we're not.
You want that loss to be. You want for Iowa to get in. You want that loss to not. You don't want Georgia to lose. You want Georgia to win. Correct. So you don't. You want Alabama sitting with 2 losses.
Correct. So Bama needs to lose. So Bama loss is an obvious one. Obviously you got to beat Michigan. You don't. Iowa's got to win. So. And then obviously, somebody's getting in from the Pac-12. If Oregon beats Washington, they're likely in. Frankly, you could see both teams get in.
Yeah, that's why you want Washington to win that game, because you want Oregon to have 2 losses, and you want that's.
Yeah, you want Oregon to lose, and then of course Ohio State's sitting at home; they can't do anything about it. You'd like Texas to lose, right?
Yeah. Yep, Texas loses, then that's a 3-loss. That's a 3-loss champion for the the Big 12.
It's an 11 right. It's an 11-2.
Or 11-2. That's right. That's 11-2.
11-2. Well, it's 11-2 Big 12 non-champion, and then
Oklahoma. No, they're playing Oklahoma State. I thought they had 3 losses.
I'm sorry, Oklahoma State. You're right.
It is 3 losses.
9-3. So, but I'm saying 11-2. They have an 11-2 non-champion, so they're not getting in 11-2 non-Big 12 champion. And that's basically where you're at. So, if all that happens, then assuming if the other thing that has to happen is the committee would have to agree with me when I say I look at Iowa as an 11-1 team, not a 10-2 team. Like if they don't see Iowa that way, then it doesn't matter because they're not getting in in their minds as an 11-2 conference champion. They'd have to be viewed as a 12-1 Big Ten champion.
And I want to agree with you on that. I want to agree with you on that play against Minnesota. The signal, I forget what it was, some kind of signal infraction where it was not a legitimate call. I agree with you. I think it was a bad call, but I have to say this because I had a discussion with you and Mark Pryor about SEC. I think it was me and Jeffrey were talking about it, and I made the comment about we were 2 plays away from seeing Michigan and Ohio State playing in the national championship, and then we discussed a little bit farther, and I talked about that call where Wilson was called a touchdown, and it bobbled as he was going into the end zone, and they called it a touchdown, and they reviewed it, and you guys criticized me on that so hard. I almost think it's karma for that.
Well, first of all, Ben, hold on a second. Couple of differences here. What happened in the Minnesota-Iowa game was unprecedented. We've never seen anything in a moment like that where an official made that type of a call. It's one thing to overturn a touchdown because a guy's bobbling it, and another thing to say that a guy who's got his arms out is calling for a fair catch when nobody in the stadium or watching on TV thought it was a fair catch. There's a difference between what happened. Even Kirk Ferentz has said this. That was unprecedented. What happened?
No, I agree. I agree. I'm not saying I don't agree with you. I think it was a bad call. I don't remember how that played out. I don't remember if they even didn't they throw a flag after the play?
No, they didn't throw a flag at all. That's what's stupid.
Okay.
They were reviewing the play, and they didn't throw a flag at all. So
it wasn't something that wasn't not reviewable. It was something they reviewed and just said, "Hey, we're gonna say that is just okay." Yeah. So that's
It's the stupidest thing. I've went into this. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's ridiculous. I mean, it's something that I looked at that and I'm like, that's how can you call that anything other than any motion a guy makes to get to the ball can all of a sudden be a fair catch. Bad call, Yeah.
Correct.
No, I agree with that.
Real quick, Ben, let's finish this. So let me just talk through this with you real quick. Assuming those losses occurred, and then of course Florida State would have to lose to Louisville. Assuming that happens, then Georgia's 13-0, they're in. Washington's 13-0, they're in. Oregon would be out at 11-2. Texas would be out at 11-2. FSU, we're assuming they would be out at 12-1 non-champions. Let me just write that down here so we can make note of it. 12-1 non-champions. We're assuming they get left out. And of course, Louisville's not getting in. Then you assume that, of course, Bama losing, they'd be 11-2 non-champions. Oregon would be 11-2 non-champions. Texas, I mentioned 11-2 non-champions. Iowa then would be 11-2 non-champions, but or as champions. But you're praying that the committee looks at that and saying, hey, they're actually 12-1. So if you look at them as 12-1 Big Ten champions, then it's going to be a conversation between Iowa's Big Ten champions, 11-1 Ohio State that's sitting at home, and the 12-1 Florida State team.
The good thing you have on that, you have Ohio State that was beat by Michigan. So how do you put Ohio State in over Michigan? And
well, that's why, you know what? Can I tell you something? I had this conversation with Mark last night, and frankly, I don't think he'd mind me sharing this on the air. He made the comment. I think he's right. If Iowa beats Michigan, could the committee actually, if this scenario played out and Iowa beat Michigan, instead of just putting Iowa in, could we foresee a scenario where you have Washington, Georgia, and then the committee just says, heck, we're going to go with Michigan and Ohio State? Put them both in.
That would be interesting.
They could do that because they'd both be one-loss teams. Iowa would technically have the 2 losses, and you're right, the committee would not want to put Iowa. They just wouldn't want to have to deal with the headache. And I mean, you're going to put Ohio, like you said, you're going to put in Ohio State over Michigan right after Michigan beat Ohio State. So they may put both of them in that scenario. But
I mean, that would be some chaos. I mean, interesting enough, though, I don't like where the Pac-12 is getting viewed as far as the rankings, because I think Washington's getting, as far as their schedule, I think Washington's had a tougher schedule than most of the undefeated teams. I mean, I look at until Michigan played Ohio State. I mean, Washington had probably the best win of an undefeated team against Oregon, and maybe still the best, because Oregon may be one of the best teams, maybe better than Ohio State. I mean, I look at Oregon and I'm probably more scared to play Oregon than any other team if they make the playoffs. So I mean, could the same scenario be with the Pac-12, where you get 2 Pac-12 players? Yes, I mean, teams and
could be, but I think it's obviously that's not happening if Oregon goes 11-2. Oregon has to win.
Yeah.
They're not getting in at 11-2 as non-champions. So if again, I think if any of those things don't happen, very similar to 2021, maybe a little bit smaller chance because of the situation, and Iowa's schedule, you could argue, is even weaker than it was in 21. In 21, they played Penn State and beat them at home. This year, Iowa got clobbered by Penn State, didn't play Michigan or Ohio State. But again, need a Bama loss, need an Oregon loss, need a Texas loss, need a Florida State loss, and you need to beat Michigan impressively and hope the committee looks at you as 12-1. If that happens, then you got 2 spots to fill with the options of likely Iowa, Florida State. Maybe they get in. Iowa, Florida State, and Ohio State. Those would be your 3 teams then to fill 2 spots, in my opinion. If that chaos ensued, and I don't expect that to happen, but if somehow that chaos ensued, that's the scenario, I think.